Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. So excited to have our next guest here, Joseph Grabas, joining us today. And again, he founded the Grabas Institute for Continuing Education. And boy, oh boy, he has many years of experience in the industry. And we're going to talk today more about him and his work and, of course, how we can help all of us today. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Very good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for a Monday morning. Happy Monday. Would you mind introducing yourself to our listeners? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Joe Grabas, and I have been doing what I do for about 45 years. And what I do is impart knowledge and try to solve problems. I'm a forensic land title expert that has to do with real estate. And what I do is I sort of delve into that area of real estate that most people aren't really aware of. What they see is maybe go to a closing, buy a property, get the keys to the house, and everything's great. Right up until your neighbor decides that he owns 5 feet of your property.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Or has the right to walk across your property on an easement that you didn't know about. You would be surprised how many people argue over property, or maybe you wouldn't, because we've been doing it for centuries, right? We fight wars over land and property, and so ultimately today we fight those wars primarily, hopefully, in a court of law. But in the past, property has always been really, really important to everyone. I mean, it's the American dream, right? Own your own land, own your own home. Person's home is their castle, that sort of thing. And so who are the people who guard that, who protect that? We have a pretty complex system in the United States for property ownership, and it's worked for a long time. It's one of the strengths of our economy, the fact that we do have such a robust system and a permanent and secure system. But there are, as in everything, areas where things slip through the cracks, where there might be problems or issues, and that's where I come in.
Awesome. Well, I want to find out more about you. Let's dive back into, I know you're in New Jersey now, right? You're in Walt Township. Have you,
Yeah.
okay. Have you always been there? Tell me a little about your background and what brought you into this field. So I got to get to know you, and I think our listeners do
Okay.
too.
Well, I grew up I was born in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and I grew up in Sayreville, New Jersey. And I find myself now living actually in Freehold. My office is in Wall, New Jersey. So I'm a New Jersey guy,
Awesome.
born and bred, and very interested in the history of New Jersey. I hold a master's degree in history from Monmouth University. And that's what I come at most things from a historical perspective, because how do we answer the questions of the future if we don't look at some of the answers of the past, right? The things that happened before hopefully guide us in our future. And so I find much of my time is spent in the past, trying to solve the questions of today and of the future.
Great. So, when did you establish the Grabas Institute for Continuing Education? And we should point out for those listening to reach you, continuingeducationnj.com. Is that a good website for you?
That, and also forensictitleexpert.com. I have two separate websites.
Great. Well, there's so much to you and what you have to offer. I mean, from the title, the legal, the real estate end. Where would you like to start?
So first of all, I have to, in full disclosure, I have to say that I am not an attorney. I did not go to law school. However, I spend a good deal of my time in the law. I work primarily with attorneys and help them, assist them in solving the problems that have come before them. But I also work with individual people on a variety of subjects. I have a group right now. It's a church, and the church was given to them 150 years ago, saying, listen, you can only use this property as a church. Well,
Hmm.
that church doesn't exist anymore. The congregation has disbanded, and they need to sell that asset, except that it's restricted. They
Huh.
can't sell it for anything but a church, and nobody else wants to
Hmm.
build a church there.
Hmm.
So these are the kind of things that I help and assist people with. Um, so over 45 years, though, I've I've learned a thing or two, and I try to bring that to the table. There's only a few people in New Jersey, and quite frankly, in the United States, that do what I do. In New Jersey, there's less than a handful, and uh, and so that makes the services that I provide somewhat unique. It's not something that everybody's going to need, hopefully, but when you do need these services, then you do need them. And so one of the things that I do, and it's kind of a credo with me in life, is that you have to continue to learn, right? You have to continue to know more and more, because there's always something new to know. And so I've invested myself. I've studied real property and real property law, and the circumstances and particulars that are involved in that. And it's from that perspective that I'm able to provide the guidance and the advice that I do. And as part of that, I teach. That's through
Hmm.
the Grabas Institute for Continuing Education. I teach lawyers and realtors and insurance producers all about real estate and the various picadillos, if you will, involved in real property transactions.
Hmm. And also, I mean, that was we're getting there's so much to your work here with the, this website and the title closing. And also, you mentioned your knowledge with the title insurance licensing exam review. Tell me a little bit about that. So, in title closing and how you offer the education for that for someone who may be interested.
So there are two levels of education for insurance and law and real estate. There's the primary education, which we do provide, not for law but for insurance, and then there's the continuing education. We all have to continue to learn, right? I
Hmm.
talked about that before, and so that's primarily what I do. I provide continuing education seminars and webinars for people all over the country. Uh, uh, the majority are here in New Jersey, but quite frankly, with the advent of COVID, and this is going to sound terrible, I know it's going to sound terrible, but in some ways, COVID was a great thing for me. Why? Because it forced me to do things that I wouldn't otherwise do. And
Hmm.
I find that often, another sort of credo of mine is, often the worst thing that could happen turns out to be the best thing that could happen. And what I mean by that is it forces you outside of your comfort zone. It makes you do things like what I'm doing right now with you that I never would have done.
All
Uh,
right. All right.
I get up in front of people and I talk. That's my gift, if you will, my wheelhouse. And I never thought I would do something like this. But now, because of COVID, I had no choice but to do it. And now I do it all the time.
Amazing, right? How many people reinvented themselves, reinvented the wheel. I mean, it was such a hard time for so many. There was a lot of loss, and still to this day, people affected, job changes, career changes, but there is some good to come out of it. People found another way of communication, of work, and this whole virtual world really clearly is just pretty amazing that we're here now today talking clearly. And let me ask, your courses, are they available? Are they all online?
So they are available online, but they're all live. Okay,
Mhm.
there's nothing recorded. So it would be a situation where you would contact our organization and we would set you up, and we would either come to you and provide a program, or we would do it through the web, through a webinar. We use service called GoToWebinar, and that's how we provide it. And we do programs from as small as 20 people to, I just had one the other day with a large realtor in New Jersey. We had 500 people on the webinar, and that's the thing, right? We talk about how people have reinvented themselves. When would be the opportunity for me to stand before 500 people in one room? And
Mm-hmm.
yet with the webinar, I can do that. It's easy enough. And I get to reach all of these individuals. And it's exciting because you get feedback. People reach out to you and say that was great. And I didn't have to take off my bunny slippers or get out of bed.
Yeah,
Right.
it's so true. Wow. And did you want to discuss some more of the courses that you're offering? I mean, there's so much from the construction liens. I was on the website earlier, the foreclosures, just so many different things. Something I never even heard of. I'm sorry, I'm not in the field. Riparian rights? What's that?
Well,
Is that the?
that is a significant thing, and water rights in general have become a huge issue in our society. Right, water is yeah, we have plenty of water in the ocean, but as we know, it's rising and it needs to be regulated. In New Jersey, the water in New Jersey, every drop of water in New Jersey is heavily regulated. And that's why we have some of the cleanest water in the United States. And we don't run into issues like other states do. But still in all, that's because we have to watch out for it. And
Mm-hmm.
in New Jersey, the state of New Jersey has taken the position that when we beat the English back in 1776, or declared our independence, we took over their rights. That
Mm-hmm.
means we, the state, owned all the water. All land now or formerly flowed by tide waters.
Mm-hmm.
And that carries through even to this day. So, how does that affect the average person? So, say you buy a piece of property down the shore, down the Jersey Shore in 1969, and it's a lot, it's a 50 by 100-foot lot. It's it's your place where you're going to build a little summer bungalow, and you own it. Now you're going to sell it. After
Yeah.
all these years, you're going to sell it, and all of a sudden the state says, "Oh, by the way, we own half of it,
Mm-hmm.
50% of it." Now your property happens to be in Avalon. It's worth $1.2 million, and the state is asking you to pay them $400,000 to get a deed for their rights. This is very much the stuff I deal with. I sit on the New Jersey Tidelands Resource Council, which is the New Jersey commission that regulates and manages the state's tidelands claims. But I also help people navigate through these things because it is a complex issue. It's not an easy thing to figure out, and it can be expensive. Uh, but there are certain discounts. There are certain circumstances where you wouldn't have to pay for it, or you might be able to reduce the amount of money that you're going to pay for it. So it's a very complex area, but it's a very important area, especially if you live down the Jersey Shore.
Yeah. And also, I mean, with your work, I just want to point out we're halfway through. Normally, we take a little commercial break here. We got to remind everyone, uh, Joseph Grabas, or you call yourself Joe Grabas,
Yeah.
how we can reach you. Tell us all forms of contact, please.
I'm sorry.
All forms of contact. You want to share your phone number, the website at this
Sure.
time? Thank
So
you.
our phone number is 732-261-1013. And you can visit us at forensictitleexpert.com or continuingeducationnj.com. Or we have a new website. We sort of simplified it. It's gicenj.com. 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 Go to any of those places. My emails are there, all my contact information about me and the services that I offer. So forensictitleexpert.com, continuingeducationnj.com, geisnj.com, or 732-261-1013.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing that. I also read about a class called Lost in Space, Owning the Air. What's that about?
So in New Jersey, we have a lot of condominiums, right?
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't realize that uh, the air that you live in, because that's what you own, your deed, if you look carefully at the deed, at the master deed, it says you own everything inside the walls of your condominium, which in
Mm-hmm.
essence is the air. And if you're, say, on the fifth floor, you're owning air 50 feet up in the air. And that's because of legislation, because of laws that created
Mm-hmm.
land or real estate out of air. One day it was air, the next day it
Mm-hmm.
was real estate. And so that's a unique situation. You also have what they call docominiums. So you'll own land area in the water to keep your boat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very particular area of the law, and it can be fraught with some peril. Master deeds are full of restrictions. A lot of people don't realize they buy a house or a condo unit, and then they find out they can't even put a for sale sign in the window because
Mm-hmm.
there are restrictions. There's also homeowners association fees and dues, which can become a lien on your property, which they can foreclose your property, can take your property away if you don't
Mm-hmm.
pay the pool maintenance fees. So there are things that you have to think about. The ultimate thing you have to understand is that owning real estate, while it is an asset, probably
Mm-hmm.
the most important asset that most people will ever own,
Yeah.
it's also a liability. Okay, everything from having to cut the lawn, to somebody slips and falls on your property, to your dog bites somebody,
Mm-hmm.
to somebody has a fence or a garage on your property. These are all liabilities, and so you have to go into this with your head up and your eyes open.
And speaking of real estate, what is the market like now? What's happening with that
So,
since you are an
so
expert?
here's the amazing thing: is that we went through the COVID period, and real estate was great during that period. Once again, I hate to say that because, like you said, so many
I
people
know, I know.
experienced such hardship, and we lost so many loved ones. But at the end of the day, the market was really strong, and it was the strongest it had been since before the 2007 recession. The interest rates were the lowest that they've been in decades. And now that, of course, has turned because the COVID has caused our economy to change. And because of that, inflation has increased.
Mm-hmm.
And so interest rates have risen.
Wow.
Ultimately, and you better get used to it, we will not be seeing interest rates in the threes or twos anytime in the near future.
Wow.
They will remain in the fives and sixes if we're lucky. If we
Mm-hmm.
drop into a deep recession, which they predict for the end of this year, um, not a deep recession, but a recession. Most people are predicting a soft landing, which means it won't be that bad. But if it's not, if it's a deep recession, then the interest rates could go as high as 10%.
Yeah.
I know that sounds awful. When I came into the industry in 1978, interest rates were at 19% for a home mortgage. So comparatively, that's not bad. Over time, if you look at a graph over time, 5 to 6% is about average. So you should not
Yeah.
avoid jumping into the market if you feel that you're ready to do that. You should consider, because a 5 or 6% mortgage is going to be a reasonable mortgage going forward.
I
And
remember my first in 2017, I bought a condo in Nashville. It was 7 point like 8% interest.
right,
Wow.
right. Yeah, and so, I think what you're looking for right now is you're looking for those people who thought they were going to hold out and make a boatload of money because obviously properties increased.
Yeah.
You're looking for those people who are ready to get out and thereby lower their prices, and you'll jump in. Some people bought at the top of the market and they're going to have to hang on for a while before they can move it again. But if you watch closely, you get a good realtor, you should be able to find some deals best, especially coming up at the later part of this year. The
Yeah.
latter part of this year, we get into the winter. Those people who are hanging out are definitely going to want to make a move, and you'll see prices come down. That's my prediction.
Awesome. Thank you. We still have 8 minutes left of the show. Joe, what else do you want to share about you and your services for our listeners here today?
Well, I think I wanted to talk about once again, sort of go back to the basics and talk about real property as history and the fact that we think of owning land as owning the physical property, but of course we can't pick that up and carry it with. We can't put it in our pocket.
Yeah.
How do we do that? Well, it's through documents. Okay. And all these documents are recorded forever by law. They're recorded forever. You can go down to the state of New Jersey and find the original document from 1664 from James the Duke of York, Berkeley and Carteret for all of New Jersey. At
Mm-hmm.
one time, all of New Jersey was owned by one guy and then two guys, Berkeley and Carteret, and that's why we have places in New Jersey called Berkeley and Carteret. Um, and then it all starts from there and comes forward, and all these documents are recorded. And it takes a certain skill to go into those documents. Many of them are written in script, which
Mm-hmm.
nobody's even taught to read anymore. And so that presents challenges, but they're also written in an older English using words like infaf,
Mm-hmm.
which nobody knows what that means. But every one of those words is important. Every
Mm-hmm.
one of those words decides what kind of title you own, how
Yeah.
you own your property, whether people have mineral rights or oil rights. People live in Jackson, New Jersey. They
Yeah.
were giving out oil leases back in the 1900s.
Really.
Someone might own the right. They could show up one day and start drilling on your property, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Things of that nature. And so these documents, they're out there and they create what we call a chain of title,
Mm-hmm.
connect all these documents. It's not unlike a family tree, which I do a lot of genealogy in my work,
Okay.
because like uh, that church that I was telling you about, I now have to go back and find the original guy back in 1880 who gave the property to church and find out who his living heirs are today.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of doing reverse genealogy. I'm not going today and looking backwards to find out who the ancestors are. I'm
Mm-hmm.
starting with the ancestor and bringing it forward to find out who the living heirs are. And I
Yeah.
do quite a bit of that work. That's one of my skills and services.
Perfect.
But specifically regarding real property. And so uh, I think that it's important for people to understand that it's important to get good legal counsel when you
Mm-hmm.
buy property, to get a survey when you buy property, to get
Mm-hmm.
title insurance when you buy your property, and to do your due diligence. You might buy a piece of property. We're talking about water rights before. You might buy a piece of property that is in a wetland area,
Mm-hmm.
and you buy, say, 2 acres of land, but you can only put your house on a quarter of an acre, and you can't even cut the grass on the rest of the property
Yeah.
because it's restricted.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't know. They're like, "Oh, isn't this wonderful? I got a babbling brook that runs through my property." Yeah, that's protected by the state of New Jersey,
Yeah.
and you can't swim in it. You can't cut the grass. You can't spray herbicides. You can't kill the gnats or the mosquitoes. You can't do any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is the kind of thing that you have to keep your eyes open. You have to pay attention. You have to get good people to work with you. And I like to think that I'm one of those people, very much about helping folks out. And if you send me an email or drop me a line, I always respond to every one of my emails. I always respond to every one of my calls, and I don't charge to do that. And see if I can help you out in some way.
Great. So if someone is interested in your services, let's remind us how we can reach out to you for that initial consultation.
So my number is 732-261-1013. You can visit us at forensictitleexpert.com or continuingeducationnj.com or GICENJ.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here, for joining us and enlightening us. And again, just curious, do they have to be in the New Jersey area, or this knowledge is universal?
No, well, there are differences in each jurisdiction. However, I'm working on a matter in Washington, D.C. right now.
Perfect. Good.
So
good. So Mr. Grabas is here, and he can help you out worldwide in a sense, but with his expertise and knowledge. How did you want to leave with your listeners today? Any quote of inspiration do you want to share with us?
Inspiration. Be diligent. Be diligent. It's important. You can't expect everyone else to carry the load for you. At the end of the day, the decisions you make dictate the life you lead.
Beautifully said. Have a great day. To all of our listeners, thank you. Please stay tuned. More of the shows coming up after the break. Don't go anywhere.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.